Great. Where are you right now?
I am in my closet in Southern California. I live in Carlsbad. I've been here 11
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
Right.
How
Right.
about you?
Cool. Cool.
Are you in Seattle?
I am. Yeah. Yeah. I'm at my home slash studio here in Seattle.
The last time I think we chatted, even social media wise, you were like on the road for a bit. So it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. I mean, I've run away so many times and had some really long, really long stints on the road, but somehow, Seattle just keeps. I don't know. I've always kept a nest here, and it keeps calling me back. So here I am.
Well, the conceit of this podcast is that we are in different places, but I'm having a cup of coffee with you, which I am. I'm drinking a cup of Columbia from a local roaster here called Cozy Canine. I'm going to shout them out because they do a great thing supporting local humane society and puppy adoption and that sort of thing.
Nice.
How about you? Do you got anything to drink over there?
Yeah,
Coffee,
I sure
whiskey, tea?
do. Yeah. Oh, I'm a coffee guy. Hands down, my drug of choice. This is from the co-op that's right across the street. It's the Equal Exchange Love Buzz Dark Roast.
I know we've got a show to do, but there was a diner in our hometown by the movie theater. Do you remember what that was? I've been trying to figure this out for years.
Annie's.
Annie's Diner. That's what it was. I might have had a
Yeah.
coffee there once when I was a kid, but I don't
Okay.
know for sure.
Totally. Yeah. Annie's. It was the place like where everyone went after any event in high school, anything that was going on. Like everyone would pile there into the wee hours, and probably, like 40 kids showing up and everyone buying nothing more than one basket of mozzarella sticks and a couple coffees, and staying there for 5 hours with a tab of $6 total or something.
I think the staff at Annie's, they might have been the only ones excited when Applebee's finally opened up in town. Take away some of that crowd. Before we go too far, we need to tell people who you are. Would you
Sure.
mind introducing yourself, and if it's even possible, tell them what you do for your life?
Sure. I'll do my best with this one. It's a head
You're a
scratcher for me,
multi-hyphenate.
even. Yeah, right. So my name is Michael Cepress, born and raised in Wausau, Wisconsin, and I live out here in Seattle now, Seattle, Washington. I'm an artist. I think the easy answer to the question is I'm an artist and musician. So a little more specifically, my world is primarily about writing and performing music, and also creating clothing. So my visual art world has lived in the textile and fabric world for quite a while, and so basically I'm in constant play between what I think is really beautiful and exciting clothes and beautiful and exciting music.
I'm going to do just a little bit of context for our audience here, a little bit of looking backwards before we look forwards.
Yeah,
We've known each other almost 30 plus years in some capacity.
yeah,
Uh, I
yeah,
was trying to figure it out, and I think that we met on the same Little League team
yeah,
at maybe 9 or 10 years old.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That sounds right to me.
I don't know if you have any memories of that era, but if you do, I would love to know what they are. I have a very specific one of you I'd like to share at some point.
Oh yeah. Oh good. 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 Oh, I absolutely have memories. I mean, yes, we were on the same little league team. Our dads knew one another from their past. I think they may have graduated high school together, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, I don't even know. But I mean, I guess I knew our dads knew each other in some capacity from once upon a time. And I would say we were about 9 years old when we met, playing Little League. And the memory that leaps forward the most is coming over to your house and riding go-karts in the lot beside your house on whatever that street is next to the restaurant, and just having a blast. And your younger brothers were there, and I mean, I kind of remember just really loving it and feeling like a whole lot of freedom being able to do that.
I have two memories. One is you. being at our house, at my family house, our farmhouse there, and we were listening and calling the local radio station to request blue suede shoes. And
Okay,
I
I totally
remember
remember it.
we got on and they played the song, and I remember sliding around in the kitchen in our socks to this song, Blue Suede Shoes. Or I think that was the song.
Yeah.
And which is not something I would have ever done on my own. So I'm sure you were inspiring it. I probably wouldn't have even known the song. That, and also visiting your house. I don't have like a specific memory, but and this is kind of one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you. But to me, your house felt like a sense of normalcy. And so you say that my house kind of felt like freedom, which is probably true because my parents were working and we had kind of this space and this random land to run around in with no one paying attention.
Yeah.
But when I came to your house, it felt very much like what I imagined a family on a sitcom was like. There was this kind of warmth to it. Your mom was always just so lovely, and you had a brother there, and there was books, and there was games, and it just felt like a very normal experience. And I always kind of craved that.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. Hearing you describe the blue suede shoes, I completely remember that. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but I,
I
I
can
clearly
I can
remember that.
still see you, with your hair kind of slicked back, which is probably unusual for a 9 or a 10 years old,
Yeah.
and just the excitement and joy that that music brought to you. I still remember that moment, and I think as I get older, I don't know for sure that my memories are real anymore, or if they're things from pictures or they're stories that have been told enough times. It's not a bad thing, but the edges blur on those memories a little bit, and that's one that I know is a real memory because there is no other record of it as far as I know. I don't think there's a picture.
Yeah.
There's no. It's just there in my brain, and I can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. One other thing I remember, and this sort of might connect to some of the other things we talk about as we continue, but I've always loved clothes. I've always loved flashy clothes and wearing them myself. And I think I was probably about 10-ish, and your mom sewed a shirt for me.
Really?
Do you remember this? Did your mom sew?
Yeah, she was very talented. I mean, she used to
Yeah.
make a lot of our clothes.
Yeah.
Certainly, every Halloween costumes and
Yeah.
all of our pajamas, or
Yeah.
she would do.
Yeah. So somewhere along the way, and I don't remember exactly. I might not have been aware of what even triggered it, but she knew that I loved flashy clothes and found this incredibly bright, colorful. It was like this sort of tropical fruit print in a rainbow of colors with bananas and oranges and grapes and all sorts of things all over this really loud kind of Hawaiian vibe. And she cut and sewed me a shirt. It fit beautifully, and I remember it being like I had already enjoyed sewing at that point, and my mom had showed me how to sew at home also, but I'd never ventured into clothing. And I remember that being like a real switch got flipped for me, being like, I can make clothes. This is something that people do. This is something that people do. And whatever clothes you want, you can go out and find fabrics that you really like and turn them into something. And it was like to this day, it really was one of those early memories that I have that connected a lot of dots for me.
Wow, that's a beautiful memory.
Yeah, it was. And we kept the shirt for years. And then another friend of our family had a younger son, and he was also very artistic and colorful kid. And so somewhere along the way, it's probably been 10 years now. Plus, I gave him that shirt, and it's in his world. So the,
I know that pattern because there are definitely photos of me wearing pajamas in that pattern.
okay, it was probably the very same fabric.
My mom has always been very a maker. She's always made things. And
Yeah.
when we were young, she had a special dedicated space room that was her sewing space and kind of crafting room. And she made a lot of our clothes. She used to sell dresses and things at the restaurant that she had made and like nautical
Hmm.
themes for the restaurant. And I think, looking back, like a lot of that desire to make things came from her. And
Yeah.
seeing her do that. I also think it was like her way of saying, if I'm in this room, you need to get the F out of here and go somewhere else because this is me. This is my time.
Right,
Uh,
right.
you mentioned on a basic level, musician and artist, especially in fabrics. You know, the younger versions of ourselves, I knew you through sports and school. We kind
Mhm.
of went different directions. I don't know how you felt about it, but did you know from kind of an early age that you had a penchant for creativity? Was that a choice that you kind of intentionally made, or did it just sort of happen as you got pushed through upbringing?
Um, no, I've always known. I've always known. Yeah. I mean, I've just always known that I'm an artist. And it was sort of cut and dried. It was never a there was never really a discovery about it. There were discoveries about how to do it in a more
Mhm.
serious way. But I mean, if you asked me when I was 5 years old what I wanted to be when I grow up, I would have told you an artist. And then I would compromise a little bit. I'd say I either want to be an artist or a teacher because I knew that if I told adults that I wanted to be a teacher, that sounded like something that was a little more reasonable and possible.
Well, that was kind of leading to my next question, which is, was there pushback, you know, in particular from your family? Because the idea of your kid growing up to be an artist, I don't have kids, but even I know that's like not something you
Yeah,
want because there's a lot
right.
of risk involved and a lot of challenges. You know,
Yeah.
were you encouraged? Were you discouraged? Were you, you know, what was that relationship like?
Yeah. My creativity, my art, my music was always encouraged. I always felt really free to just do what I wanted to do. So, spaces at home dedicated to sort of making the messes that art requires. I think if there was any pushback, it wasn't like, you shouldn't do this. It was definitely never that. But it was more kind of the cultural air that we all breathe in the United States that says, being an artist is going to be a really hard life. That's not necessarily something people do that can take care of them, that can earn them money, that can support them, da 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 da. That sort of thing. If there was any pushback, I guess I felt that, at least with my family, it always came from a place of concern, and I think just wanting to know that I would be okay and that
Hmm.
I wouldn't be putting myself in a difficult situation by choosing this as a career. But the deal with being an artist is you don't you can choose whether or not you pursue it, but if you are an artist, you are an artist. It's not an active choice you've made. It's just how you are in the world. It's a way of being in the world. And so for me, it's been more about just negotiating that and finding my way to do it. And thankfully, I love to work. I loved giving all day, every day to what I do. Always have. I remember sort of enduring math and literature classes in high school and like just endlessly being obsessed with my art projects in my mind while watching a teacher at the front of the room sort of go on about something that I really wasn't just, but thinking about, okay, how can I dye that fabric? What's the next thing I have to work on in that painting? This sort of deep obsession with it that it's always been there, man. Yeah.
That kind of speaks to the lottery of where we grow up, right? And if you had grown up, say, in a larger city or a more metropolitan area, there might have been like an art school that would have had programming or tracks that way. In my memory, we had a pretty strong creative programming system in like our high school. I don't know. I went to a different junior high, but
Hmm.
um, I do have a memory where so you were very involved in the music program. We had a really kind of expansive choir, and what was the concert that we held every year? It got to be pretty big in my
Right. The
memory.
pop concert.
The
Yeah.
pop concert, and you guys traveled and did all this stuff, and there was theater programming. I, as a freshman, I very very clearly remember I wanted to go out for drama and join the theater group. And when I showed up to the first meeting, I remember the drama teacher taking me aside and said, "Don't you play sports?" And I said, "Yeah." Okay. And they said, "Well, then this you really can't do both." And I remember thinking, "Oh, I didn't know that. Nobody's ever told me
Hmm.
that." And they said, "Well, you're going to have to choose because You can't do this and do that.
Wow.
And that was a really kind of defining moment for me in kind of it, not like it made choices for me, but I kind of just took that as a fact and I didn't push
Hmm.
back on it. And I went one way, and that dictated a little bit of who I became closer with and friendly with throughout school and what things I was more focused on. And I thought that was a very interesting thing where maybe in another situation I would have tried to do both. And
Right.
so I think that's really an
Right.
interesting gamble. We have this beautiful luxury of growing up in the United States with all the luxury that affords us and all the benefits, looking at the world. But there's still these little nuances to where you grew up, whether it's the Midwest or the coast or a city or a town or a farm,
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
change where you end up.
Right. Right.
At some point, you had to make a decision on where you ended up. I think you went to school in Wisconsin College,
Hmm.
uh, and then found yourself headed west. What drew you to Green Bay, and then what called you out towards the coast?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to study art. Um, and it's funny, even studying art felt like a little bit of a compromise of what I actually wanted to do, which might sound kind of strange. It's like, well, I knew I was an artist and I wanted to be an artist, but because I was so musical also, and had been, playing in several bands by that point, and starting to see some nice momentum with my music, even by the time I was 18 or 19.
Yeah, you were traveling around with like a local band, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah, we were starting to travel and get, booked in bigger shows, and several times, 18 years old or so, I was playing in front of a few thousand people.
Was it the Shaken 78s?
Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. First, the first band was called the Sons of Mary, and then after that, Mike Cepress and the Shaken 78s. Yeah, a little kind of rockabilly trio. And so there was part of me that, even just going to college and going to art school felt like a little bit of a compromise, because in my 18-year-old boy brain, I was like, I'm doing fine. I'm playing rock and roll. We're playing 4 or 5 shows a week when it's good. I'm great. Um, but I also knew, and the influence of some adults in my life are like, nah, you really should. You should get a degree, go to school. And actually, around that time, I was already in school, but I was really not loving it. And I went to the casino in Green Bay to see a really well known kind of rockabilly roots music artist named Rosie Flores. And she's sort of an icon in that world. And I met her after the show, and I told her straight up, I said, look, I play music, it's going really well, but I'm in art school, and it feels like it's kind of a waste of my time. I'm really thinking about dropping out of school just to do music full time. And she was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, as someone, and at that point she was well into her 50s, and she said, absolutely keep going with your music. Do it as much as you can. But as someone who has grinded through this business for several decades and seen how difficult it can be, take the time, get your degree, get yourself educated, hang in there, basically hang in there. You're actually doing the right thing. It doesn't feel like the right thing. And take it from someone who's been in this gritty, weird music business my whole life. And let me tell you, an education, having a degree is going to help you out a lot. And that was, some really incredible advice I got. So thank you, Rosie Flores. It really helped me sort of hunker down in a new way with school. And so, it was the art program at Green Bay that brought me there. I knew that it was a really great undergraduate art program, which it absolutely was, proved to be. And basically, my life for those next 5 years was art studio by day and rock and roll nights and weekends.
You were one of the first people that I knew as a young person who kind of left the Wassa area. I knew that you had gone off to school at Washington, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't travel or have a lot of exposure to the outside world. Do you think playing music gave you a little bit more of an idea of what was out in the world at a young age? And then what kind of said, you know what, I think my next phase is going to be going to take me across the country, far away from home.
Yeah, I think music was part of that. I think art was part of that. I mean, I think there's a couple facets to that. I knew that there was a bigger world out there. The music I loved the most didn't happen in the Midwest. It wasn't grown and born in the Midwest. Not to say there hasn't been some amazing art and music that's come from that area, but for me, like the music and art that inspired me the most is very much out of California culture of the 60s and 70s. So I've always kind of had this draw to the West Coast. So I think my music curiosities were part of that. Just getting out of my hometown and even seeing other towns in the Midwest was really helpful in that regard. Starting to see some bigger places. Once I was an undergraduate, I would take trips to Milwaukee and to Chicago and some bigger cities in the Midwest, which, is an eye opener for a kid from Wausau, Wisconsin. And also for me, being gay is a huge motivation for kind of realizing that I need a bigger world than that the world is a much bigger thing than the slice of the pie that I had seen up until that point, and that there are places and communities to be within in the world that can really help you thrive and be yourself. And so I, little by little, realized, okay, the more I position myself, put myself in those places, suddenly the better I feel, the happier I am, the more free I am to just, be myself and do my thing, live my life in the way that I see it. So it's a multifaceted thing for sure.
I didn't know that you were gay as a kid. I don't know if you knew you were gay. I don't know that story, but
Hmm.
did you feel at some point in your life that there was a weight being in a smaller community that you didn't really know what it was, but you didn't feel like you could be yourself in that way? Just
Completely.
based on what you just said, and then what I'm assuming is that you eventually found yourself in a place where you stopped thinking about being gay in a place, and it's no longer, at least for that moment, maybe it's a cup of coffee, something that you're defining yourself by because the community around you is less defining of you.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think just the timeline and the geography of when I was born and where I was born. Born in 1981 in Wausau, Wisconsin. Culturally, America really was not in a place where visibility was significant around queer gay people of any sort. Or if it was being painted in a pretty negative light all throughout the 80s around the AIDS crisis. So I lived and grew up in a culture that just really didn't offer examples of what that could look like and what that even was. So
Mm.
even though I've known my entire life that I'm gay, um, there wasn't I there wasn't culture and people around me where I could go, oh, there there's an example of something I sort of see myself doing. And the same goes in so many ways, the same goes for art and music. There weren't all that many examples that I could look at and point to. Or if the examples I had were more in the media, they came through the TV or books or magazines, and which ultimately I think became a motivator to move beyond and sort of look at the world in a bigger way and be like, okay, there's more out there, and I got to go be part of it.
That timeline you mentioned, just again, part of that lottery of when you're born and where you're born. But if you were born today, you would have visual access to a lot more examples of things because of the
Yeah,
internet.
yeah,
We're connecting in ways that we couldn't before. I mean, you and I are I can see you, and it
I
makes this conversation
know.
easier for me over this video chat. You mentioned the idea of kind of California culture or Western culture inspiring you as a young person, and you have a very distinctive vibe, very distinctive look that feels. And you've said in some of the work that you've written how the late '60s, early '70s really spoke to you. Why do you think that time stands out to you? Why do you think you identify with that and have incorporated it into your life?
Sure. There's a lot of different ways I could answer this question.
Pick the most poignant, most intelligent sounding one. That's what I would do.
uh, I think my grooviest answer would be that my most recent past life was in that period, and that I am here today spiritually and energetically to carry that energy forward and to be this modern moment's uh, an example within this modern moment of what that time and energy was all about, and that I've been chosen as a person to help kind of carry the torch and carry this forward. When I say carry this forward or that torch, I think it's a torch of absolute celebration of authenticity. I think it's about political, social, sexual, spiritual freedom in all the ways. And I think more importantly, it's about what happens when a creative renaissance is allowed to form. And I mean, in that window, 1965 ish to 1975, the primarily young people, but artists of all sorts, there was an explosion of incredible, high quality, experimental, expressive art, music, theater, fashion, da 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 da, all of the art forms, writing, literature, film. And I can't help but be just like a magnet drawn to it and wanting to wanting to still be in it, even though it is now, 40, 50 years ago.
Well, I wonder if the financial component of generations has an impact on that. And I don't want that to be like an easy answer, but I'm thinking about whether or not it's possible to have those kind of revolutions again in a time where financially speaking it's a lot more challenging because a higher percentage of your income goes to just surviving,
Yeah. Yeah.
whereas in the late 1960s there's stories of my dad buying a car for like $60 or $600 and driving to Mexico, and it's like, well, that's not kind of the same thing anymore,
Yeah.
or renting for 50, 60, $100 a month. It's just those are worlds. I wonder if it's possible because there were so many people able to survive either on a lower amount of income that it gave them the freedom to explore artistically, and if that's possible in our current age where especially young people are coming out into a world where it's more of a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that's a key element. Like, so a lot of the work I've done along the way has been meeting the artists from that period, sort of key players from that time, and I've created some like pretty significant primarily museum projects about those artists. And artist after artist after artist, they have, pointed out that very fact to me and made it really clear. Like I think of my friend, textile artist named Alexandra Jacopetti. Her current last name is Hart. And she wrote the book Native Funk and Flash, which is sort of a centerpiece of my research from that period. It's like perfect little slice of handmade clothing culture from that time. And she told me straight up, like in the early 70s, she was married. Her husband, Roland, had a part time job as a DJ at KSAN, the Bay Area radio station, one of the first FM stations broadcasting rock and roll in the Bay. And he worked part time. She didn't work. She was able to focus 100% on her art with 3 kids. They owned a home, they had a car, they had all the food they needed. They could they weren't living extravagantly, but on with one adult working part time as a radio DJ, they were able to sustain a life that liberated half of his time to be an artist, all of her time to be an artist and raise a family and feed themselves, da, 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 all of the things. And today, that's just an absolute impossibility,
Yeah. Well, and if they still have that house, it's a lottery gold mine,
Right, right,
which is a whole
exactly.
nother thing.
It's a whole other thing. Yeah.
I don't want to leave this conversation depressed, so I'm going to change tacks
Yeah.
here.
Sure.
As I
Sure.
sit in
But
my
you know,
studio
the pendulum
closet.
keeps swinging. So the pendulum swings in both ways. So, we'll see what
Yeah.
comes.
We were talking about fashion, and you're talking about, I mean, to me, fashion was No Fear t-shirts and American Eagle when I was a kid. So you definitely saw a bigger picture. I'm wondering, how does fashion, or the fashion choices we make, how does that impact you, how you feel as a person, your identity? I
Yeah.
mean, I certainly feel differently wearing this NSYNC Christmas album T-shirt than I do when I put on my new jean jacket, like
Right.
versus a suit. And so,
Right.
as somebody who works in that field, how do you feel kind of the human relationship with fabric and clothing impacts
Yeah.
us?
Yeah. Well, it's something we all consciously make choices about every day, whether we realize it or not. I think of it as, and it's one of the reasons why clothing and music are sort of cornerstones of my creative world, is because these music and style, fashion, style, clothing are the two kind of universal languages of humanity, in my opinion. We can know nothing about a person or a culture from any time, any place on the planet, but by listening to their music and looking at how people dress from that time or era or place, we can learn incredible amounts of information about who they are as people, because it's all coded and it's all expressive of any number of different things. Like if you study folk costume from any culture on the planet, you learn about what the geography of that land is like because of the materials that are used in creating the clothing, the dyes that they have access to, the a sense of the climate because of how the clothes are designed and worn based on what the temperature is, and and then the symbology and the the meaning that's put into the design of the pieces. It's all expressive of something. So I think clothing is incredibly powerful in that way and incredibly meaningful in that way, because even if I'll use you as the guinea, even if it is the NSYNC t-shirt, there's a story within it, and it marks a time, a place, a particular little sliver of facet of culture, and it's expressive of something, right? And
Sure.
so I see it as this amazing tool we can use. And I'm someone who prefers to be on the very conscious side of it, as opposed to like, oh no, just put on whatever and I head out. But I really like to use it as a way of kind of showing who I am and how I like to be in the world. Like my friend Celeste always says, do your outsides match your insides? Is what you're presenting, if how people see you visually, does that match who you are on the inside? And I think that there's a kind of long game goal in that, to if those two things are in harmony, you're presenting a pretty balanced sense of yourself to the world.
Doesn't that make you feel incredibly vulnerable, though? I mean, I look at it as clothing is more like an armor, and this might be a hospitality life thing where I I'm wearing clothes to represent whatever I'm doing in the moment or to help me through that moment. But if I'm using clothes to express who I am inside as well as outside, now anyone that sees me on the street or, behind the bar or, on this show gets a better idea of who I am, and I'm kind of giving a piece of myself to them. Doesn't that make you feel
Yeah.
nervous?
I wouldn't say there's a vulnerability in it for sure. You know, as a general rule, I don't mind people looking at me. Like, it's the performer in me, that sort of attention I've always been okay with. There are times where I don't want it and I dress accordingly, and there are times where I really want it and I dress accordingly. It's so, I think it's where it becomes a tool, right? It's an active tool in our lives that we can use, either, like you said, as a sort of utility to get our work done. The uniform, the uniform of a bartender, the uniform of a mechanic, those clothes are designed to help them be and help them achieve what they need to do. Helps you get the job done. And for me, as an artist, as a musician, performer, the clothes I make and wear help me get my work done. And part of my work, I've never thought about it in this way, but this is why I love these conversations. Part of my work is to express myself and be myself. And so, like, I put my effort into how I dress, what I wear, because A, it's fun and important to me, and it kind of helps. It's part of me moving forward with the work I feel I have to do.
You mentioned performance. When you are performing or presenting in some fashion artistically, is that as an artist where this is also your job, which creates this kind of blurry gray area in the middle? Are you doing that for the audience? Is it for them or is it for you and they happen to be participating? Or is there some third relationship there?
Yeah, I think at its best, it's for both, you know, though in recent years, I'm realizing more and more that a goal I have is to be of service. That my work, especially with my music, is I want to be of service somehow. I'm becoming less and less interested in the kind of uh, very personal and very potentially selfish side of being an artist, where it's like my ideas, my vision, my thing for me so that I feel good. But it's more like, okay, how do I take that and offer it to folks in a way that it can be useful and helpful to them? And I mean, even better yet, like, how as an artist can I be in service of a greater good? You know, we've got a lot of weird shit going on in the world right now. And
What?
I feel like, yeah,
Really?
I know.
I hadn't
In
noticed.
case you hadn't noticed. And I think art and music are the medicine in the midst of that. So,
I'm only focused on myself. I don't think about the outside
yeah,
world at
right,
all.
right, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Well, you're one of many in that regard.
I'm a man of the people.
Mm, that's
I
right.
was listening to some of your music this morning. You have a song, Magic Boots, that I was listening to. I was walking the dog, and as I was listening to it, I was trying to think to myself, where do I feel like I could hear this song just out in the
Mm,
world?
hmm.
And what I felt like is if I were on a road trip through the Southwest and I pulled into some bar somewhere and there was a band playing behind a fence or a screen,
Yeah.
I this song would make sense. If this song were in the background of a restaurant, the song would make sense. There's kind of this. It brought me into this kind of. I don't want to. I'm trying to think of the right term. I don't have the right language for it musically, but this kind of upbeat but also soulful vibe.
Mm,
I think of like what I imagine more house bands were like, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where that was a more common job and people were playing music they're going to the bar and there was always a live band there.
sure.
And it kind of gave me some of those feelings and memories. And it made me wonder if you feel like you mentioned earlier that you are here representing a previous era's ideals to some extent. But it made me wonder if you ever feel like you're a person out of time.
Wow, great question.
There's a lot of music I feel like that I associate with the music that you perform and I'll share. But I also feel like all of the bands that I like kind of vibe with that are also from 30 or 40 years ago. And so
yeah, yeah,
do you ever
yeah.
feel like maybe this time
Right.
isn't right for you, but you are going through it as this person?
Yeah, sometimes I do feel a little tension around that, kind of like, how did I end up here? Like, how, given what I love, what I do, and how I do it, how did I end up here? But then that kind of comes back to that idea of service again, and makes me realize, no, these are these are values that actually they're not specific to the 60s. They are timeless values that I think are a core element in healthy humanity, and that the 60s and 70s represent a really big bloom in those values coming to the surface and being advocated for. But when I realized that they are timeless, and that music is a tool we have, much like style is a tool, but music and style are these tools we have to deliver those messages. And so I'm kind of looking at my best, nearest example, chronologically, historically, the closest example to the magic and freedom and effort toward peace. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's what this is about: is wanting a more peaceful and beautiful world. Music and for me, style are ways to get there and to encourage other people to join me in going there.
It's funny. I hear your voice, and it's the same voice I remember. And even though we haven't been like close or in the same place even at the same time for 20 years,
Yeah,
it feels comfortable to me. So I hope the same the other way around.
very much so. Yeah, this is great. This is great.
I have a very selfish reason for asking you to do this. I've been struggling with this idea of whether or not I'm a good person. Not that I think I'm a inherently bad person, but I
Hmm.
look back at the whole of my life and positive, negative choices. Do they balance out? Is that something that I care about? Is the person I am today, how is that impacted by the decisions I made before? So, my
Hmm.
question, I think, for you is, are humans generally capable of being good? And how do you define what makes a good person or not?
The first part of that question is easy for me to answer. Yes, I think human beings are inherently good. I think that uh, to be good is a default position for human beings in life. I think we all arrive, for the most part. There are exceptions to every rule, right? But I think for the most part, human beings arrive in life ready to be good and ready to care for one another. If you look at the instincts of babies, they want to touch, hold, love. They need that for their own protection and survival, but they also offer it really freely. Toddlers love to help. If they see someone in distress or someone upset, kids immediately go to that person and want to somehow make it better. So I think that there's a inherent goodness in all people. And I think the shadow side of that is that our culture hammers it out of us pretty quick, has a potential of hammering it out of us pretty quickly. And that there's a lot of things culturally, especially in Western culture, that make us hard really fast, make us kind of put up walls or hide that goodness or not feel safe to express it. So, in terms of what really makes a person good, um, I mean, I think for me, 1 meter is more than goodness. I think of kindness more than anything. Are you being kind, and kind being different than being nice, but kind being, are you offering in all the things that happen in your life day to day? Are you offering yourself, your time, your perspective, your interactions? Is that coming to the table from a place of respect and kindness, and sort of always advocating for the well-being of everyone involved, yourself included? You know,
Hmm.
that's a deep question, man. There's a lot there.
I don't mean to be like midlife crisis guy, but there's a part of me who is not the same person. My wife and I were recently chatting about we've been together just over 20 years, 21 years.
Ah, wow.
And the person that I am today and the person she is today are not the same person that we married. And if the person that we were then met the person that they are now, would we still get married? The answer is
Mm-hmm.
probably no.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if I would have met her in high school, that those two people wouldn't have gotten along either. So there's this timing kind
Right.
of beauty of it, and then we've been able to grow together. but it made me think a lot about who I was as a person and the choices I made, whether they were intelligently thought out or ignorant or, things I may have said or done. Is this a system? Is our emotional, spiritual, cultural system a judgment scale like in the good place? Or is it more of a energy going out, energy coming in, and hopefully it evens out in the long run?
Yeah.
And I really don't know the right answer to that. I grew up doing a lot of religious church stuff, and so that certainly, the guilt of that sticks with me for my whole life. But it makes me wonder about, I don't want to say meaning, but if the person we are now is still being held accountable for the person we were, or still
Hmm.
being, and vice versa, if you were celebrated at some point for something good or whatever, does the person you are later in life, they still benefit from that? So should it go the other way? And
Right.
it's this balancing act of trying to figure out a place in the world and how we can leave it someday and feel that, if at least there's a part of me that feels like I would like to know that I did something good if I were to leave tomorrow.
Yeah.
And where do we find that balance? And that's, so it's a question I've been trying to do these like interviews and chats with and ask questions about goodness, just to see
Hmm.
what other perspectives are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I think about a lot is the ripple effect, and I think it relates to this idea of goodness and kind of living a life that's generally good and not of harm to other people, and realizing that, like, our everything we do has an effect, and that can be really far reaching. And it might not even be an overt action that creates the effect, but that it can be something very subtle and quiet that's creating a profound effect in the world that you might not even realize, and that is contributing to the goodness of the world. So, like, one thing that comes to mind is I meditate. I meditate twice a day. I have a practice that I've done now for 7.5 years, 20 minutes twice a day. One of the concepts in that particular meditation practice is that if 1% of the world's population meditated, that within a generation or two's time, we could achieve world peace because of the ripple effect of that meditative state. So basically, like, if a person can calm themselves and find peace within, just being a peaceful person on the planet has a significant enough effect that the ripple extends far and wide very quickly. And they sort of call it casually that the 1% rule. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily like a factual actual thing, but I love it as a concept, to, like, you find goodness, you find peace within yourself, those that interact with you in any capacity. The clerk at the grocery store, the person you walk by on the street, they see and feel a peaceful person. It gives them a little bit of that they then hold within themselves, and it might help correct and align them to be a little more peaceful and loving themselves, and it continues, right? So,
But I'm driven by the rage.
say that again.
I said I'm driven by a simmering rage, Mike. That's a hard place for me to get to. But I certainly appreciate it because I know that when I have a positive experience, whether it's walking the dog or it's seeing someone in the store or whatever, that does impact me, for another so often. Almost, I can see it in color, where that color of green, and then the further away you get from that interaction, the green kind of gets a little bit less vibrant, and waits for the next engagement.
Hmm.
Is how I see things. It's been decades, and I don't say that to be mean. It's just a fact that since the beginning of your creative journey,
Hmm.
I'm wondering if there's anything that you've learned that you feel would be valuable to share
Hmm.
about the creative journey.
um, since it has been decades now, which, I mean, honestly, that's a badge of honor I'm proud to wear. I think,
Me too. But some people don't like it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, I'm realizing as I enter my 40s, a few years into my 40s now, there's amazing fruit that has come just by the simple fact that I've stuck with it, and that I've hung in there, and that I have really stayed true to what I feel I'm here to do. And what's that thing they say about success? Like 80% of being successful is showing up. Is that what the quote is? Something like that. I don't know if you're familiar with
No.
that phrase, but um, I feel that just by way of the passage of time and me sort of hanging in there with my own work, my vision, my ideas, my creative curiosity, that alone has been huge. And so for I think thinking about the creative process and how it is in anyone's life, a really significant thing any of us can do is just hang in there, stick with it, don't set it down.
Yeah, it's the compound interest of creativity.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you put
Perfect way of
$10
saying it.
away today, and 40 years from now, you've got
Hmm.
enough money to, buy a cup of coffee with inflation.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've got a few minutes hopefully left. I don't think
Sure.
anyone can ever truly be known, but I think we can learn a series of random facts about someone with completely arbitrary questions.
Hmm.
If you're willing to join the espresso round,
Let's do it.
I'll start throw 'em at you.
Let's do it.
Quick answers. You don't have to get too deep about anything, but you're a 2016 Wausau Hall of Fame inductee. What was that like?
That was an amazing feather in my cap. I got to give a shout out to Joanne Cerny, my third grade teacher, who taught me cursive, which is still like one of the most formative, formative experiences from elementary school. I wear that one with pride for sure.
Cursive, for anyone listening that's younger, is a type of writing in which the letters they flow together and connect. Your favorite guilty pleasure movie?
Um, oh, I'm not a movie guy. I mean, as a general rule, I'm not I'm a documentary guy, but it's not a guilty pleasure place for me. That's a like juice up the brain kind of place.
Are you allergic to the top buttons of a collared shirt?
Yes, have not touched them in years. My bass player Mike always jokes. He's like, "Why do you even bother? Like, why do you even bother? Like, just put one at the navel and call it good." And he's not wrong.
You and my brother both just love a deep V around the chest. A perfect day in Seattle for you is what?
Sunny.
Does that not happen often? That's good to know.
Does it does not. It does not.
Do aliens exist?
Yes.
Would you ever shave your head like mine? We're like on the opposite ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah. Under the right circumstances, yes, I absolutely would.
I've got two last questions. If there was a band that I should check out, who would that be?
Off the top of my head, The Joy of Cooking. Berkeley, California, early 1970s, two women, Terry Garthwaite and Tony Brown. Groovy, 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 soulful, and if singer-songwriter meets funk and blues, really great snapshot of that moment.
Do you remember your first concert? What was it?
Yeah, the first real like sit-down concert was Eddie Rabbitt at the Grand Theater in Wausau, Wisconsin.
Oh,
Country
cool.
musician from the 80s, yeah.
I would have guessed something at the Marathon County Fair.
Well, and that it was a toss-up. Those were the other things that came to mind was like, is it something at the fair but I think it was Eddie Rabbitt.
Styx was mine
Oh, right on.
at the fair. If you could sit down with the 12-year-old version of yourself, the Little League All Star version of yourself, uh, what would you say to him?
uh, you can do what you want to do. You can do what you love, and it's okay.
Finally, to close out the most important question of all, if you were to stop at one of those lovely Seattle coffee shops like Burien Press, for example, one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
What would you order?
Ooh, so a favorite thing when I hit a cafe, I go to Vivace on Broadway here in my neighborhood, Cafe Vivace, and I order there. It's called a Cafe Nico, which is 2 shots of espresso with a little bit of steamed milk, cinnamon sprinkled on top, and an orange rind twisted so the orange oil sprays across the top surface of the drink. That's like my if I'm not just drinking, straight up homebrewed drip black, I treat myself to a Cafe Nico.
Michael, I really just appreciate you spending time to reconnect this hour and share part of your story and your creative journey. I'm excited to share some of it with other people that can be inspired, and hopefully that ripple effect will continue from this conversation.
Let's keep it rippling, man. This has been really nice. Such a treat. Thanks for the invitation, and what a great way to connect. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having a coffee with me. Hey there, everyone. Thank you for listening to this Coffee with podcast featuring artist Michael Cepress. Some quick key takeaways from the show today. Michael is a coffee guy. During our chat, he was sipping a Lovebug Dark Roast from Equal Exchange in Seattle, Washington. Today's show was important to me. I felt a little nervous, to be honest, to start the chat. Michael and I are friends, and have been, at least in some capacity, since the late 1980s. Even if we haven't been the kind of friends who hang out or talk regularly, or even write notes. He's someone I looked up to as a peer as a kid, for being so willing to let his passion and personality shine. Granted, I was looking at it from an outsider's perspective. When I asked him to explain what he does, he replied with, quote, "I'll do my best with this one," end quote. The answer from the multi-hyphenate is, in short, he's an artist. He didn't necessarily choose it, but it is who he is. He always knew that he was an artist. It wasn't a big self-discovery. But even at a young age, he learned to mask that answer when talking to adults. Eventually, he couldn't deny his path. Luckily, he was encouraged in both art and creativity, and got some good advice from people he looked up to. I wonder how his life may have turned out differently if the nurture wasn't as positive. I'd also point out today that memory is a funny thing, and context, like the story about the go-karts being acquired in a trade for a boat or something, sits in my brain, but I don't know for certain if that is true. I was just a little kid. I wasn't paying attention to the logistics at the time. I was living in an endless pursuit of joy. It's kind of the best part of being young and trusting. For me, that meant that Mom and Dad would take care of it. I actually asked my mom about the shirt she made for Mike, but she didn't remember it, though she was tickled to think that she may have had any influence on someone's journey in that way. From early on, Michael identified with the music and culture of the 60s and 70s California. He's here to be a connection to that time and energy, carrying the torch of that era's celebration of authenticity and desire for freedom. He looks back at that era as a good example of what happens when a creative renaissance is allowed to form. The vulnerability of our clothing and our appearance, as it potentially exposes our feelings, is something I'm grappling with currently. The Coffee People podcast, the Coffee With podcast, and the Coffee Smarter podcast are going to transition into videos for 2025. Shout out to Roastar Packaging for support on that front. And I'm excited about that growth. But I'm nervous too. I'm not someone that likes being the focus of attention, or is terribly comfortable with his looks. The reflection I see in the mirror doesn't always match what's going on inside. And because of my career in hospitality, I've learned how to mask that inner version of myself and offer up a controlled response that best represents that restaurant or bar or coffee shop that I'm working with. I'm actually thinking about these future video podcasts and the clothing that I'll wear to help represent how I'm feeling and, of course, this show. A little bit of that is inspired by Michael. Speaking of coffee shops, every town has an Annie's Diner. It may not be called that, but it is there. And it is where you go after the big game, or the prom, or to break up, or perhaps to make up over a cup of coffee that you may or may not like, but certainly makes you feel sophisticated, adult, and as if you've got it all figured out, which you'll probably realize later in life that not only did you not, but maybe you never will, and that's okay. So that's our show for today. You can find a longer recap in our newsletter at roastwestcoast.com, and be sure to follow Michael Cepress's creative journey online at michaelcepress.com, and of course, follow his music on Apple or Spotify or wherever you're listening to great music. I'll link to those in our podcast show notes. And if you're listening on any of those big platforms, please tap the follow button for this show. Give us a bunch of stars if you feel we've earned them, or just 1 or 2 if you don't. Any feedback is good feedback, frankly. And if you're out there hanging out, talking to people, tell a friend about the show. It really does help us. I'm always telling friends about Roastar coffee packaging, found at roastar.com. They're our presenting sponsor, they're supporting our efforts to go video, and they're going to help you tell the big story of your small business, especially if it's a coffee business that needs coffee packaging. Their design lab is a great place to start. Check it out on roastar.com. We're also supported by Zumbar Coffee and Tea, Maria Coffee, Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers, Crossings Coffee, Hasea Coffee Source, Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines, Me and My Uncle Coffee, Craft 42 Roasters, Relative Coffee Company, and Cozy Canine Coffee. Thank you for listening, for sharing this podcast, asking questions, and generally being coffee curious. This show, the Coffee With Podcast, is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network. And this episode has been written, produced, researched, and recorded by me, Ryan Wolt. Thank you to our guest, Michael Cepress, not just for appearing, but for being willing to just chat about himself and his life. I really appreciate it, and I hope you do too. Wherever you find yourself today, I hope it's with a fine cup of coffee and perhaps an old friend. Thank you for listening to us share the stories of coffee people. Cheers, everyone. If you are in the early stages of your coffee journey, we want to support you. Check out the Coffee Smarter Education podcasts. Coffee Smarter is designed to enable coffee drinkers to brew a better cup of coffee at home. And Coffee Smarter Pro covers industry-specific topics for baristas, roasters, shop owners, and aspiring coffee professionals. You'll find both shows on your favorite podcast platforms or on our website at coffeesmarterpodcast.com.